And welcome in, folks. Happy July 5th. I hope you all had a wonderful 4th of July weekend. I know myself and a few of us were up quite late watching the fireworks till midnight plus that. So it was a lovely day. What we're talking about doing today is combining two things that we love: 4th of July holiday with fantasy football. And what's kicking off this upcoming week on Monday is the Scott Fish Bowl. So a few of us today are going to hop on, talk about the Scott Fish Bowl, the scoring, how we're doing the strategy, just ADP, overall, everything Scott Fish Bowl going in. And yeah, stay with us. We will sit with you and join in a second. Well, hello there. Welcome back. It's a lovely Friday of this nice holiday week that we have here in the States. Jeremy is international, so he doesn't get the same holiday that we have, but that is okay. He's still an American at heart, so he's here with us. We're celebrating. How you doing today? You enjoying your Friday the 5th?
Yeah, it's a pretty normal Friday after a pretty normal Thursday in Europe. Super jealous of everyone in America who got to celebrate the greatest holiday of all time. I miss it tremendously, but alas, we move on. The weekend is almost here. How about you? How was the fireworks?
It was chaotic. It's chaotic every year. Anyone who has an animal knows just like the chaos with animals and just everything that goes along with that. The one thing I don't enjoy is all the cleanup. Like I look on my street right now and there's like shrapnel from fireworks looking like it was a war zone. So it's going to be a fun Friday doing that. We're going to go back into work later today. We'll just, cruise it in. But yeah, we're here to talk about Scott Fish Bowl. I figured like the ideal time to get before Scott Fish Bowl started on Monday. So give us one little quick review, reminder, talk about strategy, the ADP, all the fun stuff going on with Scott Fish Bowl. If you want to see ADP kind of from different websites, Aaron put together the ADP of different mock websites from the bigger companies in the industry. It's on our website. Go check it out. I'll link it in the description. Gives you a pretty cool idea of where fantasy analysts expect players to go and whatnot. Might not happen in your individual leagues, but give you a whole site idea. But why don't we start out by telling everyone what leagues we're in, what slots we're picking from, and go from there. So I'm in the Dread Pirate Roberts from the Princess Bride division. I'm in slot 5, so that should give you an idea of where I'm going with strategy. But Jeremy, what division are you in and what pick slot do you have?
Yeah, the Globo Gym Cobras. What was it? What do they do?
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember. But so didn't get into the average Joe's division, but that's okay. Goodman, what the heck is his first name? I can't even think of. Anyway, the Ben Stiller character, one of the all-time greats. I also named my team Cotton's Bold Strategy, and we're picking out of the 7 slot for SFB. So excited to get it going. SC, I know you are in the show in the SFB. What division are you in, and what slot are you drafting from?
Yeah, man, I'm in the trying to think Barbosa division, and I'm drafting from the 10th slot. I've been in the SFB. What were we on? 14. I've been in SFB 12 and 13. And I've normally picked earlier in the slots, and like I think the 3rd pick and like 4th pick were available. I want to try something a little bit different, go a little bit, try something against my grain, and really challenge myself. Trying to get centered here, really challenge myself to try to get some new players here. So with the way the scoring setting is, I know it's super flex, so people will eat up the quarterbacks, but I'm excited for what I can get, and especially with the 3rd round reversal. I'm hoping to take advantage of that and really beat the competition by getting some top 2 guys in the back of the 1st, and then the 2nd, and then reverse and gain that 3rd as well. I think people will sleep on some tight ends, and I think tight ends could do some good work here. There's some I want one of these top 5 tight ends that I think I'll get them in that 3rd round reversal. And the running backs getting the points per carry. I think that's huge too. I think people will sleep on that. Yeah. Who knows? CFC may even be there later on, but with the scoring, we talk about this all the time, man. In any league you're in, doesn't matter if it's Scott Fish Bowl, the Warrior Bowl, the home league, whatever it is, scoring matters. So pay attention to what your league's doing. And when you're in the startup drafts, it's good to take your known guys, right? But at the same time, if scoring doesn't benefit certain guys, then you can pass them and get them later. There are some quarterbacks I like later in the rounds that I think, people will sleep on. So just pay attention to what people are doing, and don't have a backup plan to your draft strategy. That's always key. Don't be like, damn, you took that guy. I don't know what to do now. Always have, your queue set up to do what guys you want to take at that level too. But Straw Hat Pirates is my team name there. So we're excited to be with the Barbosa Bowl, and let's get selling on the high seas. You know what I mean? So.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think looking at ADP is a good way to kind of see how it goes. I mean, obviously you want to win your division, but if we're talking playoffs, it's a different strategy. You kind of have to, if you're trying to win it, which by the way, you're not going to win it, but for the people that have big ideas and think they're going to win it, they're going to try to get these stats in the playoffs. Yeah, he's like, I'm taking this thing down.
You play to win the game.
Work out with how it goes in these drafts, right? You might be going in with a division and you're like, oh man, I wanted to stack, whoever it is, Kincaid and Josh Allen. That didn't happen, right? So you kind of got to pivot, end up with another one. So you can still have success. Don't panic if you don't get the guys you wanted or whatever it is. Just be water, like we always talk about, because each of these individual 12-team leagues, the ADP is gonna be massively different. You'll see some leagues Derrick Henry will probably go in the 3rd round. Some leagues Derrick Henry will probably go in the 6th round. Like there's a massive range of outcomes for these players. So don't be super dead set. And by the way, there's gonna be changes. I think the biggest bonus is the kicker bonus, the kick return yardage and punt return yards. We don't know who the starting kick return or punt return yarders is basically for every team in the league. It's pretty TBD at this point. We have an idea. So I'm in the group 5 chat and they're all talking about, I got to get these kick return guys. And I'm like, but if they're not playing a role on an offense, it's severely capped. They're going to give you 10 points per game at most. So we have to be kind of careful with how we go about chasing these players too, because this is the later picks. If you're taking Xavier Gibson, the guy's going to be a 0 offensively. So you kind of know that of what you're getting. So, with the strategy, I think that we need to get those guys, but don't go over the top investing in it where you have to get all these guys. I did see somebody like you talked about tight ends. I think they had Laporta, Kincaid, and I think it was Pitts or Andrews, their first 3 picks. And I was like, good God, that's just sex appeal right there. I love what that person's doing.
Well, you talk about kick returns. I think it was who do we have on our show, or who do we do a show with? Hutch, I believe, that brought up Rashid. Rashid Shaheed, that he finishes top 15 receiver. Well, I think also, people are skipping on Marvin Mims. I think Marvin Mims has an opportunity to be a special teams player, and I think he can see some valuable time in a wide receiver room that's really open outside of Cortland Sutton. But even with Cortland Sutton there, it's how much is he really going to do when you have someone like Troy Franklin or Marvin Mims there too? So I think that's a guy that I'm not seeing a lot of mock drafts even get drafted, but I think that someone with those kick return yards could have a significant impact in playing for the Scott Fish Bowl as well. So,
yeah, 100%.
On Rashid, I think Jesse, you were saying, we don't know who these kick returners are. If Rashid Shaheed is truly the wide receiver 2, I don't think he should be returning kicks. And so we don't know what the Saints are going to do, but historically teams will scale back or totally eliminate those guys' role on special teams if they're going to play a predominant role in the offense. And sometimes those guys are so good. I mean, you could argue that with Shaheed, with Mims, that they could play the role in the offense and still stay on special teams. I think the issue then is we just don't know exactly how that's going to shake out. So one thing that I'm looking for is potential rookies who could play a role and then also break out on offense. I like the idea of Xavier Worthy. I don't know if he's going to be a returner, but he's in an amazing offense, a wide open depth chart at wide receiver, and could be a returner. I think he gains some value. And then I'm not sure what's going to happen in Miami with kick return. Maybe it's Malik Washington. I don't know, but maybe it's Jalen Wright. That could be a really sexy later round pick. I don't know that that's necessarily in his bag, but you just got to try and find these guys who have the path to a role and have the path to the return. I think there's only a handful of those guys.
Well, they're changed it in the NFL this year, right? The kick return, how it happens. Yeah. So I mean, to your point, you may see guys that have a pretty decent role in the offense, but because the kick returns are different to try to avoid the injuries, the impactful injuries, right? Because that happens a lot of special teams. It can happen like that, So especially I know Scott Fish Bowl drafts are happening, but I mean, pay attention to Rashee Rice. He may be sleeper too, but I know he's in OTAs, camp and stuff. So he's someone that if he's there, then Wardy could be that kick returner guy. I think Achane and Dale, those are two candidates to be kick returners because of their elusiveness and what they can do, but yet they could still be very impactful on the offense too. So that'll be big. And I will say this: don't draft. The points matter, the scoring matters, but don't draft the guy because you're like, oh, he had 600 kick return yards last year early. You know what I mean? Those guys, like if that's all he had, if he had a couple receptions, you could sleep on him and get him later, maybe your last couple rounds of the draft, and hope he has that offensive success as well. But don't overdraft it because you're like, oh, he's gonna go out and get 1,000 yards on the kick return this year.
Yeah, I think to your guys' point on Rashid Shaheed is because he did both things last year. He was a top 6 wide receiver in this, like over 20 points per game. Like this format is set up for him, so I don't think you can go too high with him. I think he's going to be offensively and likely gets that. But to your point, guys like Greg Dortch, he had 126 extra points return yards last year. Like he had 630. Like you're talking about, that's a late target guy you can go after because there's upside. We've already heard coaches hype him up where they're saying he's gonna have a big role offensively. If he's still doing kick return, punt return yards, that's kind of how you hit the nuts format. And like we even said, Mike McDaniel earlier this offseason, he said it wouldn't shock me by week 4 if every number 1 wide receiver, number 1 running back, based on the new format, is going to want to return like kick returns and do that. So like,
sure,
I don't think you're going to see the Saquon Barkleys and those guys doing that, but like I think it's possible that one time they might put Tyreek Hill back there. Like we need a big play, we're down 7, let's throw him back there. Like so you could see situations like that come out where they got to put their best players back there in the case to win the game. So I just think it's interesting. It speaks to the uncertainty that we have going this year. We're going to look back in 3 months and we're going to look and be like, man, we were so wrong on these guys. You just hope you hit a few of them, right? You hope you hit that 15th round pick, the 18th round pick. You're like, yes, nailed that one. It's like, that was a terrible pick. It's like, oh my God.
Well, the big thing too is, it's not best ball. You're starting these guys. So you could draft it. They could be great, but are you going to pull the trigger and actually starting them? Or are you going to hesitate each week? Like they had, 20 points last week, but then the following week they have no kick returns. Like they just have turnover, or like a punt. You know what I mean? So that will always be a factor too. And that's where the strategy comes in, right? You got to know when to play your guys and when to have them on your bench. It's not just about, it's best ball. They just best score goes in there. It's like, nah, you probably have some points on your bench, knowing what weeks to benefit them. But, after the first couple of weeks, you should get an idea of how offensive players are schemed into it, right? So after that, you should have a better understanding on, okay, now let me look at matchups and stuff. Because first couple of weeks, it's hard to choose the matchups because, 1 week, it's everyone's getting the dust off them, right? It's like, all right, we're back in season. Week 2, it's like, okay, let's see if this is really how the offense is going to run. Week 3, it's like, okay, this is how it is running. And then week 4, you're like, all right, I feel comfortable starting these guys now. So,
yeah, so I guess I'll ask you guys this. Are there any, based on the changes, because, Scott Fish, he also changed the amount of players that are starting each position. It's basically 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, and just a ton of flex guys along with the tight end. Are there particular strategies you guys going in knowing your slot that you, before the draft, like this is kind of the strategy you want to employ in your drafts?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to SC's point at the beginning when he first joined us, you can't stay and hold true to your strategy if the board changes, right? You have to be fluid and be able to react. But there's 2 things that I want in Scott Fishbowl in 2024. Some of that's based on experience from previous years, but some of that is just based on the way that I see value falling in some of our, startups and mock drafts that we've been doing. One of them is I want 2 quarterbacks early. In the past, in Scott Fishbowl, I've pushed QB2 down the road. A couple years ago, I ended up with Zach Wilson. Last year, I ended up with the duo of Derek Carr and Kyler Murray as my QB2 in there. And obviously we know that didn't go well. So it's always a crapshoot when you're pushing QB2 down the road. It doesn't mean that you can't hit on the right guy. But for me, I think I'm done with that experiment. I want to make sure that I get 2 QBs probably in the first 4 rounds, 5 rounds, depending on how the draft falls. I may go QB at 1-2. I just feel like there's value at quarterback because more people are picking wide receivers earlier than ever before. And the second thing that I want to make sure that I do is get a ton of running backs. Essie mentioned this as well. The points per carry is massive here. I'm a 0 RB guy. I think I've done it in every single startup I've done this off season. I'm doing it right now in a startup that I have with that SC and I are in. I didn't pick a running back, I think, until round 9. I love the zero RB. I feel comfortable with running backs later. There's no way I'm doing that in Scott Fish. So you can go ahead and do it. Plenty of people will do it because that strategy worked for some over the last 2 years. You need to be grabbing running backs early because those are the workhorses. They're at the top. And then for me, I'm looking to find wide receiver value later. So lock in my QBs. I'm going to try and get one of those top 6 tight ends for sure. And then running back, and we'll find some wide receivers.
I think. Go ahead, Jesse.
Oh no, I was gonna say, like, I'm 100% with you on that. Like, it's a lot easier in this format for the running backs to score the points, and we see them kind of get boosted to the point where you can find these replacement level running backs really easily, guys that will give you points in the scoring format. I think with the wide receivers, and what I've kind of gone to as the wide receivers is I want the early wide receivers, or I kind of just want to take darts at wide receiver on top of that because. Like we saw last year, CeeDee Lamb was still scoring 26 points per game. That's up with Josh Allen points per game basis. Like him and Tyreek Hill were still really good. It really affects the guys from like wide receiver like 8 to like wide receiver 30. You see this just glut of dudes in there. So I don't really want to push up my wide receivers, the wide receiver 16 in round 4. Like I don't really want to do that. I don't see the benefit of doing that. What I want is the elite tight ends. I want it's particularly tight end and running back because Kyron Williams was the 2nd points per game among all players last year. He put up 27 points per game. And he's falling to like the 6th round sometimes. And I'm like, I get it. There's variance, but you could get a definition of a league winner right there. So knowing the scoring and how it affects, I think, is really beneficial. So for me, it's like I want the elite running back early. I want the elite tight end early. I want those 2. And then I want to see how the draft falls. Given I'm in the 5th slot, like my plan is to take CMC. I hope that happens. I don't know if it's going to happen. But like if it doesn't, I'll probably pivot to like the quarterback or tight end and move it from there. Just because to your point, with the quarterbacks, like I think this is the year you can actually push it and get value, but you can push it too far and you can end up with guys you don't want starting, right? Where you're like, this guy's suboptimal, this hurts. So with any strategy, there's variance with this. You just have to be careful if you are going to push those quarterbacks. You don't push it too far because you can be looking at your quarterback room and be like, I'm starting like Gardner Minshew as my QB2. And if that's your situation, like you're sticking in that boat going downhill. So you just have to be careful. Yeah.
No, I agree with you. And I think for me, in the 10th spot, I'm thinking I'm going RB heavy. My plan would be, or my hope would be to get Brees Hall and Bijan. I think that would be an elite duo, especially with this kind of setup. Yeah. Especially, they still get half-point PPR, right? They're not getting the full point or the point and a half like your tight end and wide receivers, but they're going to get the carry. So they're going to get 20 carries a game, and that's, going to be an extra, 5 points a game just off that. And with that, I'm hoping, if not, though, because looking at the scoring, Brees was number 7 scoring, and then Bijan was 9 scoring. So right before I pick on the 10th spot. But then if not, Mahomes is there. But I think Mahomes, I think Stroud, I think, Burrow, Murray, I think those guys will go before that. So I think I'll be able to push that back and then get that tight end, because on the 3rd round reversal or even in the 4th round, I'm comfortable potentially getting a T-Law or maybe a Tua. He's falling. Purdy, Herbert, maybe, all these guys that don't have that rushing upside, but I think they can still get some good passing yards in there. So it really comes down to the draft, but I agree. I think I want to go hero RB here just because I think those carries will matter. Again, I want guys that pass catch as well. So I'm not necessarily just getting a guy that's just fully running. Like Pacheco, I like a lot, but I also know he might not be as involved in the passing game with the wide receivers they have. But I think that'll be a big part in knowing where your guys are. Like I don't want to go zero RB in this kind of strategy, in this kind of scoring setting, because I don't want those guys that are getting 120 carries this season. Like I want guys that are going to be fed 170 plus at least, because I know they'll get points just off of that alone. And plus you'll have the breakout games too, right? So I'd rather have 2, 3, 4 elite guys. And wide receivers are so deep. I mean, that matters. And it's also getting your Amon-Ra's. It's also getting your Justin Jefferson, your Jamar Chase. But it's so deep that you can have a solid wide receiver 2 become your 1 just because of the scoring they put up too, So I'm okay punting on the wide receivers later. And then in this league I do want a top 5 tight end. I think normally I punt the tight end and I'm like, I could stream them, but I think
It's
it becomes beneficial with that 1.5 point per reception for tight ends to actually make an impact there too.
Yeah, to your point on those running backs, the volume is king, in particular in this format. So guys that people don't think are very good are going to fall, like Josh Jacobs, Rashad White, these guys that are going to be volume kings.
Najee Harris.
These are the guys you want. Sorry, what was that?
I said Najee Harris.
Najee Harris, exactly right. You want the guys that are going to get volume. Like this format rewards it because it's a 0.5 point first down for receiving and rushing. These running backs are going to get both, and then you get the points per carry. Like if you have a guy getting 300 touches, like they're going to give you a massive amount of points. Just how this format rewards it. So you could take the quote unquote ugly running backs, right? The guys that people are like, oh, they're not very good. Mm-hmm. So like I'm more than likely probably gonna end up with Rashad White on my team because like I expect him to get a lot of volume. Mm-hmm. I am not worried about Bucky Irving stealing all of that work. And I like those type of guys I think are really beneficial in rounds like 8, 9 that fall really far in this format. You can stockpile those running backs and really give yourself an advantage over the rest of your league because like you kind of go with how the market's shifting and people love wide receivers even though this format doesn't reward it. So I kind of go the other way with it where I'm going to like lean into the scoring edge personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm interested in what you guys are thinking about in terms of quarterback. Because SCU mentioned Pat Mahomes available at 10. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. People in the 7s are seeing Pat Mahomes fall that far, and it's because the rushing quarterbacks are being pushed up in this format. I get that, but I think Patrick Mahomes is going to throw at least 40 touchdowns this season. And if that's the case, like he's done pretty much every season of his career except for last year. So if that's the case, I think he's being tremendously undervalued just because he had a dip last year. We saw everything the Chiefs did this offseason to kind of, create, improve the offensive line, get him better weapons. We know the names there. Everybody's healthy. Rashee Rice is not in jail. So, we assume that this is going to be a good situation here. And if it's a good situation for Patrick Mahomes, he's going to throw a crap ton of touchdowns. So I don't know why he's falling that far. If he's there at 10, I would absolutely snag him. If he's there at 7 and the guys that I'm looking at, like the A-Rich or the Lamars are gone, which fine, then I'm happy taking Pat Mahomes. So I don't know what you guys are thinking about your quarterbacks and that value of the rushing quarterback versus the guy who's going to throw a ton of touchdowns.
Yeah, it's massive. Like I really want the rushing quarterbacks, but like you're talking about Patrick Mahomes, he's a one of one. There's no other Patrick Mahomes. Like he's in my like discussion for pick 5. Like I'm not gonna lie about that. Like if I can't get CMC and the other like rushing elite quarterbacks are out there, like Allen's gone, Hurts is gone, those guys, and it's like him or Lamar. I'm probably gonna take him over Lamar just because I think he's gonna have a better year. But I'm right there with you. I think. Go ahead, Jesse.
Well, you would take him over A-Rich too, I'd assume.
Yeah, I'm really big on the Anthony Richardson. Like I think. I'm going to take him over A-Rich, but A-Rich is in that discussion too. Like, I think he belongs in there with Hurts and those guys. Like, he could legit break fantasy, and he could be pushing 30 points per game in this format.
I think you'll find out early in your drafts who's paying attention to the scoring and who's just taking the players off their name. Because I say he falls to be at 10 because in the scoring right now last year, CMC, Hurts, or this is actually, I guess, projections, but CMC, Hurts, Allen, Lamar, Tyreek, CD, Brees, Richardson, Bijan, Jonathan Taylor, then Mahomes. So it depends. Like I know people, and that's what I'm saying. People eat up the quarterbacks because it's super flex, and that's fine. But I've found you can still find value later. I know it's not as big, but again, this volume and this stuff favors. Yeah, your rushing quarterbacks will get it too. But outside of your Josh Allen, maybe Lamar might not even do it this year with Derrick Henry there. This is gonna be the first time where he has a legitimate, a threat to take away rushing carries for him. Allen should potentially, get all of them, but I think James Cook is a sleeper too, where I think they could use him and be like, Allen, we really need you to focus on getting the ball to these wide receivers so we can make them relevant, right? So if Mahomes is there at 10, though, that's going to be hard to pass on, even if like Brees and Bijan are there too. But I think that's going to be a big part in understanding. I don't think he's there. I think people push the right receivers down rather than him. But if he's there, I think that when it comes to an elite quarterback like that, I mean, he's the one of one where he beats quarterbacks with rushing upside just because of the passing volume. And this, I've said it before, is the first season where it's like, oh snap, he legit has a full wide receiver room. Like there's 3-4 guys in that room where it's like I want them. Like I think Mahomes can, he's a quarterback that can feed the ball. He's not just passing to one guy. He's passing to Travis Kelce, but we know he can feed the ball around. We saw it started going around with Rasheed Rice as well. Now he gets Hollywood Brown. Now he gets Xavier Ward there too. So there's going to be some relevancy there. And because of that, you can get a stack. If you're not getting Kelce, you can get Rasheed later. You can get Hollywood Brown's falling way deep, and I don't know why. Wardy too. You can get them, so you can get that stack in there as well, and still build on your strategy prior to with having the wide receiver slips. So, if he falls to 10, I don't think so. I think outside of CMC, maybe CD Lamb. I think a lot of people are going to go quarterback in the first 7-8 picks. But then again, that's why I chose back, because I just feel the value's there with going from 10 to the second round and getting Bijan, Tyreek Hill, and then in the third round, depending on what tight ends are taking, I can also get maybe a Trevor Lawrence or a Jaden Daniels who might have some rushing upside too. I don't know how comfortable I feel taking the rookie there, but yet, he could have heavy upside with the rushing there. So.
Yeah, if you can get Jane Daniels like the 301, I think that's a smash just based on the scoring settings and how it works out. So you could go the other way with that. You can go AR, get your running back every one at 201, and then you could Jane Daniels. I like being in that 301 spot because you have a lot of good options, however you want to set up your team. So you go running back heavy, you go those lead rushing quarterbacks. There's a lot of different ways to go at, which is why I usually go back in a third round reversal. But it's really just to pick your poison. You go two heavy tight ends, there's every possible strategy works for your spot in the draft. I think there's nothing off limits. So that just looks like it's a lot of fun. So you just get to play out however the draft goes for you.
I'll be curious to see, because there's all these flex spots, how many people just try to lock up these tight ends with the 1.5 point PPR. I think there will be someone, maybe not my draft, maybe not yours, or there's just gonna be someone in a draft that's just like, I'm just gonna get 4 tight ends. I think they're gonna try to lock up your Kelce, your Pitts, your Kincaid, and McBride all in one, and just have them flex out. But if they get the volume, that could benefit. So typically, you don't necessarily get the tight ends like that, but I think with the scoring, the way it's set up, that could be pretty good.
Yeah, 100%. I'll ask you guys this: are there any late round guys you are particularly looking at as targets for yourself that you want try to log up on your team based on scoring, or just players you're into this year?
Depends how late we're talking, I guess. The first name that popped to my mind automatically. Yeah, the first name that popped up to in my mind automatically, which is far too late, is Tim Patrick. I just think there's a chance, and I'm going to have so few wide receivers that he has a chance. He's going to be free. He's going to be going in in probably the 20s. And I think I'm definitely going to have Tim Patrick on my squad just in case he's the second target earner there. Another name I like is Greg Dulcich, same team, right? They're just wide open. He's got an opportunity there as well. We saw his flashes in his rookie season. So those two guys for me kind of right away pop off. And then if I'm thinking, I don't know, a later running back, I'll take a shot on a rookie. I'll go with Jalen Wright, who will probably be going very late. I'll go with maybe a little bit earlier, a Marshawn Lloyd. I think Trey Benson's probably going to be a little bit too rich for my blood in this particular draft. But Marshawn Lloyd and Jalen Wright, I think, are good values. If there's injury there, those guys could explode on great offense.
100%. I think those are great picks. You got anybody you're looking at, SC?
Yeah, keep it on Denver. I mean, I said earlier, Marvin Mims, I think that, is going to be a possible sleeper, and he's also could possibly go undrafted. When you're looking at running backs, I also like A.T. Perry. I know people are on Rasheed Sahi, but A.T. Perry is a monster, man, and he's a red zone target. And I really loved him at Wake Forest. He's very stiff in his movement, but he knows how to get the ball. And he's about 6'5", 6'4", something crazy like that. So he has that catch radius where he could definitely become the 2 in that offense. He had received in the slot. But the running backs, guys that I've seen slipping, just in general, it might not be in Scott Fish, but just in general in drafts I'm doing, Gus Edwards, Kamani Vidal. I think those are both guys that could get heavy workload in a Greg Roman offense. That you want to talk about, carries matter. Well, that's prime for what the Chargers offense is possibly going to be this year. So I think I'm taking Kamani earlier just because Gus Edwards is already a little banged up. So I think Kamani could have that, and he could basically go undrafted at this point, and that's something too is Scott Fish. There's no trades, right? So you have to be
Mhm.
effective on your waiver wires to know what's going
Yep.
on there. Y'all brought up
Yep.
Minshew as well. I know you don't want that as your QB2 necessarily, let alone your QB1, but he's still partnered with Devontae Adams, right? And so he should get the starting
Bowers.
role, and Bowers. So he still has some
Yeah.
depth there where it's like if you need it, in this type of league, you might want to get 3 QBs if you can. And that's
Yes.
not a bad third option because that bye week filler, hey, he could go out there and throw 230 yards just to Adams alone, just because that's how good Adams is, right? So, I mean, that's
Yep.
something where it's like, all right, you can take that in, and all right, he's just coming in to fill in my bye weeks, but yet I'll put in T Law and Purdy and whatever it may be. But I think that's someone that the name isn't sexy, and this is a type of league where the sexiness of the name isn't as attractive as what can happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you could get the guys that look very nice, but it's like, all right, but these guys might have the better potential, but yet they don't have the name brand behind them as well. So, those are some of my late round targets. I just think they can benefit with where they're at and with the scoring there is.
Yeah, I like those. I think if you're targeting those players on those offense, like if we're targeting a bunch of Broncos, you should probably look at Bo Nix because he's going to get the rushing upside no matter what. And he's been a rushing quarterback his entire career going back to Auburn. So I think him and Drake May I kind of view similarly as like late round quarterback targets with upside attached to their names. There's obviously risk because they're rookie quarterbacks, right? But like if they're your QB3, you feel a lot better about having those guys in those slot where you're not super dependent on those guys. You take an upside shot one of them, and if they hit, then you have another guy you could plug in that gives you an advantage. But yeah, like targeting these offenses that people think are quote unquote ugly, so like the Patriots wide receiver room, all those guys are like round 14 or later, like Jalen Polk, any of those guys, Bourne, Demario Douglas, like it's super cheap. And yeah, like you can just figure out the guys you're looking for based on where you're going, and like just play the draft and see how it goes. I know Jeremy, you got to get out of here, so if you want to take it, feel free, man.
Guys,
See you
we'll
guys.
see you next time. Keep giving them all the good Scott Fishbowl advice, but not the best Scott Fishbowl advice. We still want a shot at the playoffs and to win. But we'll talk to you guys in a bit.
Yeah.
All right,
for
so
sure.
then, yeah, I was also gonna say, so like for say you start this running back heavy format, right? You get your Bijan and Brees going off the turn, and then the 301, maybe you get your quarterback or whoever you're going for there. How does that impact the rest of your draft? How are you gonna play? Are you gonna force certain players to like fill needs, or you just kind of let the draft fall to you after that? Like you have the 2 running backs, you have the advantages there. Where would you look to kind of go after that if that's your startup strategy?
In a perfect world, I get Bijan and Breeze as my first 2 picks. In the 3rd round, I'm getting one of the tight ends. With the 4th, I have to lock up a quarterback then at super flex, so I definitely want one. And then really just figuring out the wide receivers too. I definitely want a top wide receiver. But again, wide receivers are so deep as far as what they can accomplish. I know Justin Jefferson, everyone loves him, but he also has a rookie quarterback. So does he have the same impact? Amon Ra will go heavy and stuff like that. So filling out the wide receivers there. I also want to learn tight end though. I really love the 1.5 points for tight end. So having someone like maybe I get a Kincaid and maybe go back and get an Njoku or a Schultz. Maybe not Njoku. I don't like how him and Watson really connected, but maybe a Dalton Schultz, So I think going hero RB, I'm gonna have a lot of running backs. I think can get some pass catching volume as well. For the wide receivers, I want the targets in there. But you could get targets as a solid wide receiver too. It's knowing the offense and knowing what quarterback is there. Like right now, for example, Houston. All those wide receivers are going around the same spot, maybe around 6, 5 even or something like that. So every one of those wide receivers, though, I think can pop. And once everyone follows me, it's like, okay, I can go ahead and get them. Like I think Diggs has a good season this year. I know people are saying it's Nico and Tank Dell. Well, Diggs is going there to be the one, right? And Stroud, I think, will have a good connection with him. But also Dell and Nico, they paid Nico, and we saw what Dell did in a sample size of amount of games last year. So those are 3 wide receivers I really love. So it's really knowing about the offense. I'll take the dart throws on a Denver wide receiver. I really love Franklin, and because Bo Nix is his quarterback that was at Oregon, that's going to be huge as well. So I want to go heavy RB early and then fill out my wide receivers just again because the wide receivers are so deep and there's so many NFL wide receiver rooms that I don't have to just get the one. Like, your Detroit Lions, if you're not getting Amon-Ra, you may take a flyer on Jameson Williams, but that's someone you could get past the 10th round. If you're going with the Cardinals, Marvin Harrison's going to go early. You can probably take a flyer on Michael Wilson, but that's going to go later. All these guys, they could go later, but yet they still have some good upside. So I'm okay filling out my wide receiver room like that if I'm getting the legit running backs that falls to me. But, if a wide receiver – if Marvin Harrison's there in the 3rd round, when I get the 3rd round reversal, then I'm gonna be like, all right, I'm gonna take him here, So,
right?
and again, that's what we said earlier. Your draft strategy could go out the window, but be prepared to adjust, be prepared to go and make sure things happen. Just so when you are doing that, it's making the right calls. So, I'm ready to throw my whole draft strategy out the window just because how people draft. And, may have some people in the Barbosa League watching this. They're like, no, we're not going to let this guy get those players. So it's totally cool, but that'll be my draft strategy right now, and then, but I'm ready to throw the wrench in if shit happens. I'm like, all right, I got to make this happen.
All right, let me ask you this. Since there's so many 12-team leagues and there's so many different teams, a lot of people will go with the strategy of best ball where you're trying to diversify a little bit to give you an edge. So are you leaning into kind of differentiating your teams, investing in, like we talked about, the Broncos or these Patriots or these offenses that people don't find as sexy to kind of give yourself an advantage going towards the playoffs? Or are you more looking to kind of just give yourself the strongest roster possible and seeing how it shakes out? And if you make the playoffs, that's cool and all, but that's not kind of something I'm really focusing on with my strategy.
So let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So outside the kicker, there's 10 spots, right? So for sure, I want to try to build the best roster in my first 10 rounds to just get the guys that I think can make an impact regardless. But if you're considering people on my bench, I'm just looking for players that I feel comfortable starting on a weekly basis. I feel comfortable plugging them in for the bye weeks. Those type of players. Like I'm not trying to build the top heavy names top to bottom in my roster, but definitely in the first 10 rounds because I want those guys. I need guys that have volume and they get it right. So, but after that, it's like, okay, I need to start taking some dart throws here and making sure it's happening as well. To just have that upside there, but time and time again, in Scott Fishbowl 12, I made it to the playoffs. And that was, I think I was pick 5 there. But that's scoring was completely different then. So it's all about adjusting and just having guys that can find some upside. Because in the end, I mean, even if you get top heavy names, I mean, anything happens in the NFL, whether it be an injury, maybe they get traded during the season, and then that all goes away, right? So just be prepared of being adjusted or being able to adjust on the fly and things like that. So having the guys I feel comfortable with that can get some volume is what I'm looking for in my bench to go through as well.
Yeah, I think like with a lot of we'll target these sexy players, but like previous years, the guy won with Jalen Hurts. He had like Kenneth Gainwell in his starting lineup who got him a touchdown. It's guys that we don't think about, but like they got a touchdown in that important week that push you over the edge. So the way I look at it is I think I'm not super worried about diversifying that much. Like I will make it a goal to not target all the same guys because I like to get a little EV edge on ADP and stuff of that nature, but the farther you stray from ADP, the more likely the bet is worse for your team. So you kind of have to accept that variance. I think for me, the bigger question is bye weeks of the playoffs because like week 13, it starts, right? So you have all of these guys on bye weeks, these important games where are you comfortable taking Lamar knowing you're not going to get his points in one of those matchups in the playoffs, right? I think that could be kind of like a tiebreaker edge for me. Maybe I'll like sort to someone else in that situation just because the way people aren't familiar with Scott Fishbowl, but if you're not, it's your average weekly points plus the weeks you score in the playoffs. Like those come together and that's how you advance each week. So whatever your average these weeks, say it's like 180, you would add, if you scored 180 in the playoffs that week, you'd have 360 that week and that would go against the field. And if you scored enough, you'd advance. So like you can do this a little bit and get a little detail with that, but I think sometimes we over evaluate that because I've done that in the past. I didn't even make the playoffs. So it's like, did it matter? No, not so much. Like last year I went old team. I had Eckler, I had Andrews, and I had Derrick Henry as my first 3 picks, right? That team completely shit the bed, as you could tell, because all those guys were injured or hurt, and it goes that way. So sometimes you kind of have to be careful. But even if your early round picks bust, you can still find gems late. So if somebody gets hurt or whatever, don't be too down. Just like try and find a waiver wire. It's 22 rounds. So It is a lot deeper, and it's a lot shorter of waiver wire. So that first round is just you kind of just have to do your best to survive. It's hard, man. There's a lot of teams. It is what it is.
Well,
so.
I mean, you talk about guys that could get potential volume late. I mean, even like a Devin Singletary. I know people love Tyrone Tracy, but Devin Singletary is likely the RB1 in New York right now for the Giants. So that's so that you could definitely get later as well. That can be your replacement if your top guys get hurt. CFC. I know people love CFC, but if something happens to CFC, do you go and get Isaac Arando? But be aware about the waivers. Yeah, when you first start week 1, waiver wires maybe dead in a sense unless something happens during preseason, but it's important to stay on top of them because a lot of times if a guy's popping, you want to get them as soon as possible because you don't want to miss out on that consistency of them continuing to pop, right? You see it time and time again where a guy has that solid week and then they become a part of the offense. So be aware of what's going on there and how to affect that as well. Question for you, because I know kickers 3.3 points, per extra attempt, and then 0.1 per field goal. What are you taking the kicker? Normally you pull a kicker, but I mean, are you trying to take a kicker past your starting lineup, like maybe around 13 or 14, or are you punting till the very end for a kicker?
With how I treat kicker, like there's a lot of variance year to year with it. I know like Justin Tucker is the name guy, but he hasn't finished kicker 1 in a long time. Like he's been top 5 every year. Yeah. I'll just kind of take it when it goes. I don't want to be ending up with a really terrible kicker. And with MFL, it's different. You could flex kickers. So there's a viable MFL strategy of taking floor kickers. With sleeper, it's really just you get one kicker to start. So what I've done in a lot of these mocks is I'll usually take the Dallas guy Aubrey because for some reason he was the kicker 1 last year. He's falling in ADP, and I don't know why. If people just are familiar with him, what it is. So I'll target him because I can get him like kicker 5 in round 17. And then I'll come back with like the Seahawks kicker in like the 21st round or whatever. So I'll have like 2 really good kickers I can trust and I can do it because I don't want to be like on waivers if one of the guys gets hurt. But I know people are like, they're a floor play. I'm like, dude, floor plays are fine. You could roll floor plays. I think it's personally a bit more viable in MFL where you could just absolutely just fill your flex spots with kickers at the end and you could just, survive. You don't have guys crushing you. Like I know people that follow Lynn Delians, like she put together a whole spreadsheet on Google Docs where it showed you the win totals, strength of schedule, they're weighted. Like it shows you the guys that kind of target where it's like the kickers in good offenses, basically. So if you have a guy in a Cincinnati, a Dallas, a Baltimore, Detroit, Buffalo, they're more than likely going to be at the top. So worst case scenario, you just target a good offense. Your kicker's likely to be there because there's no negative points for kickers and quarterbacks, which is nice. Previously there was. Right. So like just take the guys you trust. I wouldn't put too much into it, but 13 to your point on 13, that's a little early for me. Like I'm personally not going to do that. But hey, maybe my leagues are drafting them in around 10, and then I got to change my strategy, right? To your point. Yeah. So ideally, I want to take one around 17-ish, 18, and that's kind of where like I look at the ADP guys are available. It's pure dart throws at that point in the draft, so I'm fine picking a kicker there. But if you want to go get your guy, because at the end of the day, you should be happy with who you're drafting, right? And if you want whichever kicker you're targeting, go get that guy around there. Like, no, it's really not that big of a deal to reach for a kicker. I'm fine with it.
Well, the reason why I asked is because that 3.3 per extra point made, or that's extra point. Yeah. So, you think about that, a team that scores 4 times a game, 3.3, what that's going to be 12, about 13 points. Yeah. And then you think about maybe they get 2 field goals that are a 25-yarder and a 30-yarder. That's going to be, 5.5. So that's already a 20-point there. So I think that's something because those extra points matter where it's like, all right, I want a team that's going to score and then a team that has, a kicker that can get a 20-yard field goal because I think, especially when you get to your later rounds, I brought up 13 because at that point, you may not be getting guys that are putting up 15 points a week where a kicker could possibly do that. So, especially if you get one of those top guys on a heavy offense, then that's something that could benefit you. Again, play it out is, definitely people will follow and stuff like that so you can get your guys. But I think it's fair to be aware of don't just disregard the kickers of this year, Slipper 2, because I think, there's going to be a time at some point in the draft where it's like you're debating between this guy or a kicker. And it might be beneficial to get the kicker instead of the flex option just because the kicker, one, they're seeing the field when they scored a touchdown. And 2, they're gonna get the field goals, and those field goals being 0.1 per field goal, I think are awesome because I think that's great that you have a 40-yard field goal, you have 4 points.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull this kicker sheet up I'm looking at from Linda, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. 1 second, I gotta add the stage. I'm gonna switch on this really quick, so it's right here. So you can see with the kicker scoring, she sets it up by win totals and dome games and stuff of that nature. And I think that's really important because win totals projection, that means they have a really good offense. And if you're playing in a dome, you're not dealing with the elements. So the guys that pop out to me are Aubrey and the Lions kicker, these guys that are in really good offenses. They're going to be near the league leaders and win. So their offense is you could kind of just from a wholesale perspective, there's ways to go approach this, I think. And if anybody wants this sheet, you can get it off for Twitter or I'll send it to you, whatever it is. But it's a good way to kind of just look at kickers in general. And there's also a crap ton of stats on here down below. If you look down below, it's kicker totals, weekly versus quarterback. She does a really good job. So if anybody wants to get in the weeds with kickers, I would highly recommend that because there's some beneficial information there. And she has a format where she weights the kickers. She has Moody at the top, but I'm fine with any of those guys. I just with any of the positions, I want elite guys. So if I can get a guy that can give me a kicker one scenario, I'm fine with that. So that's why I kind of just let the draft fall to me. As long as it's one of those top 8 guys, I'll take them. And then I'm bullish on the Seahawks offense. So I'll take a dart throw on the Seahawks kicker late. So that's kind of my whole strategy with it. So, but you can do it with any of these guys. It's just, I really enjoy that. I'm going to move this back really quick. Sorry about that. I think it's just a viable strategy. And MFL is a little bit more detailed because you can flex all the kickers in the world you want. In Sleeper, you only get one. So it's kind of limits the kicker strategy a little bit. So it's unfortunate, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah. I agree. It'll be fun going into the drafts because I think there's so many scenarios you can do. And as we said earlier, you can have the draft strategy, I'm doing this, but you have to be able to adjust, like you said, be like Walter, right? And that's going to be key because some guys are going to fall to you. Like we were saying, Mahomes may follow me at 10. And at that point, man, I didn't want to take a quarterback in the first, but if he's there, that's pretty great,
right.
So, but Kyler Murray is a big one too, where it's shit, man, I really like Kyler Murray this year as well. But being flexible, be aware, I think there's so many different draft strategies that one can do. And I think so many draft strategies are going to get messed up just because you're in different leagues and people are seeing what you're doing. They're like, man, I got to take my guy heavy. In the end, regardless, this is what, 3,000 people in it, I think, in the Scott Fish Bowl.
Over 3 this year. It's a lot.
So
it's a lot of people.
There's tons of things you could do. It really all comes down to, man, you just got to have the best foot moving forward, have the depth. You don't just want to be like, all right, I'm just getting the one RB because I want to take wide receiver heavy. That's great, but you also need to get some backup RBs and know when the tiers are. I think having tiers are important in this kind of draft too, because it's you don't want to take a Derrick Henry and then you're like, all right, I'm good for a running back. That's my RB1. But then the next running back off the board where you're like, all right, I need to get one, but you're staring down Zeke Elliott. You know what I mean?
Right.
You have to be all right, you want to be flexible and have some strategy there to not necessarily have those type 2 are going at 0 RB, so to say, as well. So
yeah, I think with slow drafts, it's a little easier. You won't get as flustered because if you have fast drafts, sometimes you get flustered. You got to pick. With these slow drafts, I think it's 8 hours to pick. You have plenty of time to know your pick. But you can go into Sleeper and it already has the ADP set up. It will shift over time, but with they are doing these slow drafts so close, the ADP is not really going to shift right away. Right. So you'll see kind of guys where Kyler Murray's at pick 21 at ADP. I'm just looking at it right now. Jaden Daniels is a little bit farther down. So if you're looking at the second round quarterback in the mid range, you could target those guys. You can kind of give yourself an idea of how this draft's going to play out. Obviously, the farther away from it you get to round 5, you're it's really hard to predict how it's going to go round 5. But round 2 and round 3, you kind of have an idea of how your draft's going to go. So you can kind of come in with a strategy and go from there. It sucks that you can't trade, but it makes sense. It's just, know what strategy you're going to do. There's literally, I feel there's 50 strategies we can employ in this. It's however you want to do it, right? You could go kicker heavy if you wanted to. You could go bully tight end. You could go robust running back. You could go hero RB. You could just absolutely pound quarterback. There's a million ways to go with this draft. So whatever you want to do. But at the end of the day, it comes down just get the guys you want, have fun, and enjoy the process because this is what this is all about, really. It's I don't expect to win. I'm going to try to win, but I know it's a very, very slim possibility. You're not playing just one 12-team game. You're playing 12 times hundreds.
Right.
It's a little bit more complicated. So I just have fun with your strategy. Don't stress out too much about it. And just if you're water, like it'll be fine. You look down, you're like, you know what? Look at my team. Got the end of it. I'm like, you know what? The team's fine. Like I'll live with it. It's just it kind of is what it is because I like getting in the weeds, but sometimes we get into a little bit too much where we overanalyze and then we get we used to get we can't think of it. We're like, I don't know anymore.
The goal is to hopefully just get into the playoffs. You know,
Yes.
Reback get into the playoffs. And last year, I think I went spicy and I got Joe Burrow as my first pick, and then that didn't work out. You know, I won't be spicy this year. If the guys fall to me, I'm gonna get them. But that's gonna be, you know, just get to the playoffs, and then the playoffs, it's a whole, you know, you start at 0, right? It's a whole different beast. Everyone starts the same, and you just gotta make sure you make those moves to benefit you. You know, was it week 4? Is it week 14 or 13? I think it starts
13.
earlier.
Yeah, it's 13. So yeah, like. Well, you technically don't start at 0 because you get your season scoring average, like your weekly scoring average. So just know that going in. So if you kind of see, like, say you're in week 10, you're close to the borderline of making it, like you're going to need that team to kick on strong to have a playoff advantage. Yeah. If you have a high scoring team, you know, you can maybe make some floor plays. You can kind of dictate based on that. But yeah, just, you know, do what you can to get in because the winning team from each division gets in, and then it's like basically the highest scoring team. So even if you're not first place, you have a lot of high scoring points. You could be freaking 6 and 7 and have one of the highest scoring teams. You still have a shot to get in. So don't let the record necessarily discount you because if you're scoring a lot of points, your team has a shot to get in. That's what matters. Because like I think last year I missed the cut by like 50 points with like how awful my draft went at the beginning. I was like, oh, we still got a shot. It started coming on. I just looked too late. It's just like, but hey, had a shot, so I was fine with it.
And this one too, it's not based on wins, right? Like the wins total match like if you have like 11 wins, you're automatically in. It's just
scoring. Yeah, I'm gonna look it up right now. There are cutoffs of like if you get this amount of wins, you basically lock up a spot. But let me see. I'm gonna click on playoffs right now. Scott Fish and see what it says. Because I say stuff, but then I kind of forget. All right, so the top 1,250 teams advanced to the play. Oh, this is SFB14. Sorry, I'm on the wrong website. So yeah, I don't know the cutoff right now, but I could look it up and I'll get back to you because I don't know something. But there's a like a dead set amount of teams. Like you get an amount of wins, you automatically get entered in. So I don't know what that cutoff is. I think last year it was teams with like 11 or 12 wins automatically got in, if I know correctly. And then there was like it went further from there. I'm kind of rambling because I don't know. I'm trying to look it up, but I can't see it right now.
I'm trying to see it here too. Let's
see. All right, here's my 14 rules. Let me look. All right, so playoffs. Here we go. The regular season is 11 weeks. Week 12 is wild card week 1. So 2,000 teams make the playoffs. Half the field makes the playoffs, so you have to be better than half. All teams with 13 wins or more make the playoffs, and the remainder based on points. So if you don't have the 13 wins, if you have the points, you can make it. And it's like we talk about playoffs. It's your average season weekly score plus what you score in week 12. So the playoffs start in week 12. It's a little bit earlier than most, and then it just starts cutting percentage teams down. It's like 1,500 in week 13, 1,400. Week 14, 1,100 teams make it. Week 15, 500 teams. It really gets down to this slim. Week 16, the semifinals, 250 teams. And then week 17, 50 teams make it. And then the highest scoring team from those 50 teams make it. So it's basically just like you're hitting thresholds, cutting it down. But you just have to be 50%, get in. So if you're 50% or better, you're going to make it. So there is a shot. Even if you're 1-6 early on, you still have a shot to make it if you score enough points. That's what it is. So don't give up. Don't just be like, screw this. There's a shot. So this is what I enjoy about Scott Fish.
Yeah, no, it's really anyone can make it. You know, anyone can have a solid draft, and you know, again, I think it's being on top of your waiver wires, being on top of who's gonna pop, being on top of injury reports. That's big too. Like, even if you have a guy, not necessarily injured, but you have a guy that hasn't been producing, going and get the guy that may be stepping in because someone got injured for a week. Because that 1 week, you could drop him the next week, but that 1 week could be the week that saves you to have the good point, or maybe give you that 13th win that you need to lock it into. So be a lot of things to be aware about. And yeah, I mean, you could be winning your division, but yeah, you could be the worst team that has the best team in the whole Scott Fish Bowl. So, you know, so it's definitely very critical to know what you're doing and what to be aware about. The draft is fun. I can't wait to get the draft started. But I also know when the draft starts, everything I'm talking about is probably not going to go how the way I envision it. So
yeah, 100%. Like, just kind of you'll be like, all right, this is what I was going with, and then great, Mahomes win, all these running backs win. Like I've seen,
right.
to your point on Bijan Brees, I've seen people reach for those guys earlier, so they might not be there when he gets to the turn. So it's just kind of like you have to just make the decision when you get there. And thankfully, it's a slow cock. Like you have time to figure it out. People could take up to 8 hours if they want. Like personally, I know people get upset at that. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like we're still in July. Like you get this couple week window where you get a draft and then you move on to the regular season. So just enjoy it. If you get frustrated, maybe just go, touch grass or do whatever you got to do to not get frustrated with someone taking a clock, because people have lives. They have things they have to do. So like you might be waiting all day for round one. It'll happen, but the draft will finish at some point. So I wouldn't be too worried about that, because I know this has come up every year with these slow drafts. People get so pissed. And I'm like, dude, it's not a big deal. I get it, but it's not a big deal.
If I'm not mistaken, I know in years past they said, though, if you go auto, if you go like back-to-back auto, that they'll end up kicking you. Yeah, so just be aware about that. Again, we all have our own lives, but, if you're coming up, just, be checking out on it, because, if you go back-to-back auto, it's like, all right, we're going to find someone else that's in. So, I think once maybe I had someone go auto just in one, but then they caught back in the second. So, that makes sense. But again, just be aware about that. If you get two autos, then you end up getting the boot.
Yeah, because some people can't have access to their phone. So if you don't have access to your phone and job for 8 hours of time, just set your queue. Set your queue ahead of time. So that way, set it for a round, and then you'll be fine. You won't get kicked out. You don't have to worry about it, because people have lives. I get it. So just be prepared and enjoy the process. It's what we're here for. Everybody loves this tournament. It's the biggest one in the world. It's a blast, and it's what we're here for. So I think that'll probably you want to wrap this episode up?
Yeah, for sure, man.
Right. So for this episode of the Scott Fish Bowl, remember it starts this Monday, 7 a.m. West Coast time, 10 a.m. Eastern time. So make sure you're up. West Coast heads myself. Like if you're on early in the clock, just wake up early. It is what it is. Most of you'll be up. But yeah, we have I think we're doing a Warrior Bowl giveaway this Sunday. We're doing a couple other things going on. So make sure you check on the website. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We appreciate any comments, any feedback y'all have. We'd love to hear it. All social media platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, every one of them. We're on all of them. So yeah. I just want to thank y'all for joining us. Hope you enjoyed your 4th of July. I hope you enjoy the weekend, enjoy the holiday, and and then we'll kick it off with Scott Fish Bowl on Monday. So for SC, Jesse, Jeremy, we're all out. So take care, folks.